Okay, we're going to look at a topic on rates of reactions. This is how quickly chemical reactions occur. Okay, the speed of a chemical reaction. So as we're going through this slide, I'd like you to pause and jot down information from the screen. So if a reaction is happening very slowly, it has a slow rate. If we look at what's happening at the molecular level, the molecules are combining at a slower speed. Some reactions can take hundreds of years. Okay, other reactions can happen very quickly. So when something is burned, that's a very fast chemical reaction. And weathering, chemical erosion of limestone is a slow chemical reaction. If you look at what's happening at the molecular levels, in example A, we have two molecules. They're bumping into each other, and the word we use for that is they're colliding with each other. Two red atoms here, and a blue and two green atoms. So these molecules are combining with each other. And what happened in this case? Nothing happened. You still have the same molecules after the collision as you had before the collision. However, in example B, so you can imagine these molecules are combining together with more force, faster. So a chemical reaction did happen where something new was formed. So we have a completely different molecule being formed here. And we have a separate atom here that's not in a molecule. Okay, it's just looking here, when atoms and molecules bump or collide with each other, there's an increased chance that they will react. So the faster they react, or the more energy that they react with, the more chance that they will combine to form something new, that the chemical reaction will happen. So anything that increases the collision rate between atoms and molecules will increase the rate of reaction. So we're going to look at some of the things that increase the rates of reaction. We're going to look at five factors: temperature, concentration, particle size, nature of reactants, and catalysts, and we'll look at them in detail. Just to look at this picture here, okay, I suppose it's to do with particle size. So we have quite a large structure here in the center, the little green atoms, and they're reacting with the red atoms that are on the outside. So obviously it isn't possible for every green atom to react with a red atom. Only the green atoms that are on the outside are the ones that react. So this will be quite a slow reaction because every green atom is not reacting. However, if this green structure is broken up into smaller pieces, okay, there are far more green atoms capable of reacting. There's very few green atoms that are not close to a red atom. So this is an example of how breaking a large structure down into smaller pieces, so you're reducing the particle size, can increase the rate of reaction. Okay, now as we go through this topic, there is 5 experiments you would normally be doing. These experiments would be split over the 2 years. Okay, so we'll have to look at the theory of them at least. So investigating temperature. If you raise the temperature of a system, the molecules will move faster and they're more likely to react together. So I asked you to carry out a simple experiment at home where you had water at different temperatures. You added a vitamin C tablet. The warmer the water was, the faster the reaction occurred, and the reaction was over quicker. In cold water, the reaction happens more slowly. Therefore, the reaction continues for a longer period of time. So I want you to examine carefully the way this experiment is done. We're going to use marble chips, which is limestone, crushed stone, and we're going to react that with hydrochloric acid. So at the start of this, we're going to measure out 20 grams of marble chips or crushed stone, calcium carbonate. They're all going to be more or less the same size. And add that to a conical flask. Then we'll add 50 centimeter cubed of hydrochloric acid and place this flask in a water bath at 20 degrees for 5 minutes. So this is making sure that the flask is at the same temperature. Add the acid to the marble chips and immediately collect the gas produced. Okay, so we have the conical flask here with marble chips in, and we're going to add acid into or onto the marble chips. Now, it can be done the other way around. The marble chips could be in, and then you add the acid, or the acid could be in there and you add the marble chips. But immediately we need to collect the gas that's produced. So these chemicals will react together to produce carbon dioxide gas. And we need to collect the carbon dioxide gas through a plastic tube into an upside down graduated cylinder that has been filled with water. Okay, immediately we need to record the amount of carbon dioxide gas that's produced every minute. So we record the volume of gas produced every minute. Then we'd repeat this experiment using water at a different temperature. Okay, not this basin of water, but the basin, the water bath that the flask is placed in. So if this might be the setup. This is from a YouTube video, and I'll post a link to the video later on. If we just examine the photograph, this is our conical flask. In the conical flask, we have marble chips and acid. This is our tube coming from, and it's dipping under a graduated cylinder that's filled with water. So the student would measure how much carbon dioxide has built up in the graduated cylinder every minute. And then it's repeated for a different temperature. So this flask might be placed in a beaker of warmer water to see would the reaction happen faster. Here's a sample set of results. If we look at this, so this student did it 3 times. The first time it was done at room temperature. After 1 minute, 10 centimeter cubed of carbon dioxide gas was collected. And then another minute, 20, and so on. You can see it's a nice steady increase in volume. Then the student did it at 40 degrees Celsius. So what do we notice? Okay, the carbon dioxide was being produced faster. And it was repeated again at 60 degrees. And you'll notice that after 2 minutes, almost all of the carbon dioxide had been produced and nothing much happened. The reaction was over for the next couple of minutes. So the reaction happened very quickly and was over very quickly at the high temperature. Okay, so one way that we could improve the presentation of a set of data like that, okay, is to use a graph. So if we examine this graph, the blue line represents the slow and steady reaction that happened at 20 degrees Celsius. If it was slightly warmer, the orange line shows the amount of gas was produced faster, and by the time it came to 3 minutes, it was almost all over, but it was all over after 4 minutes. And the gray line represents the hot water. Okay, so the first minute, a lot of gas was produced, almost all of the gas was produced after 2 minutes, and it was all over after 3 minutes. So a very fast reaction here at 60 degrees. And you can predict what the reaction rate would be if the student carried it out at 80 degrees Celsius. Very steep line up like this, and then leveled off. Okay, so that's a very important graph, very important method back here. Okay. And very important that you be able to convert data like this into a graph, or if you're given a graph like this, that you're able to explain what's going on. Now, another thing we could change is concentration. We could make the hydrochloric acid more dilute or more concentrated. And this corresponds to what I had asked you to do, where you use diluted vinegar and bread soda to see how quick the reaction is compared to undiluted vinegar. So reading at the top, if there's more molecules of a substance in a system, there's a greater chance that molecules will collide and speed up the reaction. So If a substance is more concentrated, that means there is more molecules. So the reactions will happen faster. So remember at the example at the start, if we have more of those red atoms, the reaction will happen very quickly. Now we're using acids. The concentration or the strength of acid is measured in something called moles, and you'll learn about that in leaving cert chemistry. In this reaction, we're going to use 3 molar and 1 molar hydrochloric acid. So the 3 molar hydrochloric acid is much more concentrated than 1 molar. Again, we're going to use marble chips to crush stone, the calcium carbonate. Okay, so it's the same basic reaction, same diagram, except this time we're not changing the temperature. This time we're changing the concentration of the acid. Okay, so the experiment is carried out in the same way. Okay, gas is collected. We measure the amount of gases collected each minute, and the information can be displayed on the table. So just have a look at an alternative way of doing this experiment. I just thought we might have a look at this as well. This is called a gas syringe. It's an alternative to using an upside down graduated cylinder. So we have our magnesium and the hydrochloric acid. In this case, it's not carbon dioxide gas that's being produced, it's hydrogen gas. That's collected into this gas syringe, which pushes the syringe out. And the student can record the volume of gas in the syringe every minute. It's just another way of doing the experiment. Here's a sample set of results. In this case, the student did 2 experiments, 1 molar and 3 molar concentration. The 1 molar, like before, we have a slow and steady production of hydrogen gas. The 3 molar is more concentrated, and we can see the reaction is over sooner. Okay, it's a faster reaction. We can display this information on the graph. The 1 molar reaction, straight line up. And the 3 molar reaction between hydrochloric acid and magnesium. Okay, we have a steep rise. And you could imagine what a 6 molar reaction would be like. You'd have a very steep line here before leveling off. So the more concentrated the substance is, the faster the reaction. The third thing we can look at is particle size. The smaller the particles are, the faster the reaction will happen. So smaller particles have a larger overall surface area, which increases the rate of reaction. We're going to go back to our first method. Again, we're reacting marble chips and hydrochloric acid. We're going to collect carbon dioxide. In this case, we're going to have the same temperature, the same concentration of carbon dioxide, but the only thing we're going to change each time is the size of the marble chip pieces. Okay. So what we can do is we can grade or separate our marble chips out into different sizes. Okay, you can make a prediction. Which size do you think will have the faster reaction rate? Okay, so in the explanation here, a large particle like this has a relatively small surface area. But if you chop the same cube up in this diagram into lots of smaller cubes, you actually end up with a larger surface area. So you will end up with a fast reaction. So the powder here will be the fastest reaction. The larger particles will be a slow reaction. So if this was plotted on the graph, okay, which one of these would have the steeper line? Okay, which one would have the slower line? So you get a steep, fast reaction with the powder, with the very small pieces, and you get the slow and steady reaction with the larger pieces. The reaction will be over very quickly with the smaller size. The nature of reactants. So it depends on what the actual chemicals are. Some chemicals react faster than others. That's the point of the nature of reactants. Some elements are very reactive. Sodium and potassium from the alkali metals, group 1 of the periodic table, are very, very reactive. So they are involved in reactions that are over very quickly. Other chemicals such as copper react very slowly. If you were to list metals in order of their reactivity, you have a list called the activity series. Now we can do a simple experiment like this. We can take 4 metals, calcium, copper, zinc, and magnesium, and react them with hydrochloric acid. Okay, here's a little method. Adding 2 grams of magnesium to test tube A and the same mass of zinc, calcium, and copper to each of the other test tubes. Collect the gas that should be gas with a tube and an inverted graduated cylinder. Record the volume of hydrogen collected from each test tube at 1 minute intervals. So can you predict what the graph would be like based on these pictures? Which one would give you a very steep line with the reaction over very quickly? Okay, so calcium, lots of fizzing going on in calcium. It's producing a lot of hydrogen very quickly. And which one would be the very slow reaction? That might take a long time. Copper. Okay, copper may not have even reacted during the time of the experiment. Okay, you can look at a picture like this and make a visual comparison. Or you can actually do an investigation where you collect the gas from each test tube, record the volume of gas produced every minute, plot the data, draw a graph. Okay. Now we want to look at catalysts. A catalyst is a chemical that speeds up a chemical reaction between other two reactants. Catalysts don't change in the reaction. Okay, they're still there at the end. So they're speeding up chemical reactions that would happen normally. Now, if we look at, there is a chemical called hydrogen peroxide that will slowly break down on its own. It will decompose or break down into water and oxygen over time on its own. Manganese dioxide is a catalyst. It speeds up this chemical reaction. Okay, so without the manganese dioxide, it happens very slowly. With the manganese dioxide, it happens more quickly. So if we're looking here in this experiment, we can add manganese dioxide into a conical flask, add hydrogen peroxide, and immediately collect the gas produced. The gas in this case will be oxygen gas. So hydrogen peroxide, okay, will slowly break down into water and oxygen, but this reaction rate is increased if a catalyst like manganese dioxide is added. Okay, so the reaction is happening here. We're collecting the gas here, and we collect the gas every minute. We measure the amount of gas every minute, and we can record on a table and plot a graph. The experiment can be repeated with different amounts of manganese dioxide and compare the reaction rate in each case. So if you add a lot of manganese dioxide, okay, if you were to add 50 grams, it will happen. You'll get a very fast reaction. You get a steep line. Compare that to if you add a small amount of hydrogen peroxide. Okay, so we are specifically using a catalyst here, which is a chemical to speed up a chemical reaction. Now, sometimes this happens inside cells, inside plant cells and animal cells. We have catalysts that speed up chemical reactions or control the speed of reactions. These are called biological catalysts. Enzymes are biological catalysts. One example of a biological catalyst is catalase. All living cells produce hydrogen peroxide as a waste product of some of their chemical reactions. Hydrogen peroxide is toxic and it has to be immediately broken down. Cells can't produce manganese dioxide, but they can produce catalase. Catalase does the same thing. It speeds up the breakdown of hydrogen peroxide. Okay, in this experiment, we're putting hydrogen peroxide into a graduated cylinder. We're adding a small cube of liver to the hydrogen peroxide. And we're not really going to collect the gas here, but we can measure the height of foam in the graduated cylinder. So you can see a picture of the foam being produced. We can measure the height of the foam every minute or every 20 seconds. And this can be repeated using a piece of liver that has been crushed. So this is exposing the liver, creating a larger surface area of the liver, breaking down the liver. So you'll get a faster reaction. If you crush the liver, you're getting a faster reaction. Okay, so just to recap, these are the general types of graphs that we'll see. So we can analyze all of these reactions by putting the data on a graph. Important point to note that we have the same amount of product at the end. So what we're doing is we're measuring how quickly the product is made, and we're keeping record every minute. And the product is often a gas. It could be carbon dioxide, it could be oxygen, it could be hydrogen. And very often we make the same amount of product at the end. Sometimes it might take a long time to get there, slow reaction in green, or we might get there very quickly in a fast reaction. Okay. I'd like to have a look at a question from the science sample paper. A student carried out an experiment to investigate the effect of temperature and the rate of production of a certain gas. The first reaction happened at 20 degrees Celsius and the second one at 30 degrees. So we're doing the experiment twice. In both cases, the gas produced was passed through the water as it was collected. This was to ensure that the gas was always at room temperature. If the gas is hot, it tends to expand. So before measuring the volume of gas produced, pass it through some water. That cools the gas down. Okay, so if we're having a look at this is the 20 degrees. There's a set of results. Okay, time was every 30 seconds, and this was at 30 degrees every 30 seconds. So from looking at the data, which was the fast reaction, okay, so you're comparing even after 30 seconds, we had more gas produced at 30 degrees Celsius, and the same along, more gas produced at 30 degrees Celsius until the end. Okay, we have the same gas produced in both at the end. So this is a faster reaction. You're asked to plot that information onto a graph. Okay, so the blue line, okay, 20 degrees Celsius, gets there at the end, gets up to the 20 centimeter cubed of gas being produced at the end. And the green line is the higher temperature. Okay, a faster rise gets there sooner. Two conclusions we can make from that. So the reaction is happening faster at a higher temperature, and if that means that the reaction will be over sooner. It stops sooner at high temperatures. Okay, now I need you to go back over that slide, all of those slides, stop, take down, make notes. Okay,